We are here with legendary Manchester United fan and friend of the pod, Rick the Red. Rick, great to have you back on the pod. How did your summer go? Great to see you. How's everything on your side of the pond?
It's all good, mate. I've had a fantastic summer, and still enjoying it now. I'm away at my daughter's in Spain now, so thoroughly enjoying the summer.
I certainly could have used a summer in Spain after last season. So transfer window just closed. What's your take on the window? Do you like the business we've done, and any acquisitions in particular that stand out to you as a favorite?
I've got to be honest about the window, because I've heard one or two people being critical of it, but we've spent a lot more money than I would have expected us to spend. I mean, obviously we are Manchester United and we expect to be able to spend big, but it's not really been the way of things like this. I mean, you tell me. I don't know. Is this the biggest transfer window we've had financial wise? We've spent a lot of money, haven't we? We spent 250 million or something. So in that respect, it's a good window. How the actual signings work out, obviously I don't know a single thing about the goalkeeper. I'm praying that he works out. But the others, obviously, we've seen them all. And I'll rate them in order at the minute. Top of the pile, and Bumo he really looks the part. I'm very, very happy with him. Next, Kuna. Not as impressed with Kuna as I am with Bumo, but he certainly looks okay. And then Sesko. I'm amazed that he's only had one start in the Grimsby game, and he didn't pull up any trees in the Grimsby game. For the amount of money that we've paid him, paid for him, I'm absolutely praying that it looks okay to say I'd put him behind Bumo and then Kuna.
You cut out for just a bit, Rick. I'm sorry. It might be the connection on my end. It might be the connection in Spain. You know, they focus on the good stuff, sun and the food, not always the internet connection. But any areas of the window that you think we could have strengthened? You think they're leaving certain positions for next window, or any areas where you think they could have given Ruben Amorim kind of more weapons in his arsenal in advance of this season?
Yeah, we certainly need another midfield player. I've got two different angles on that other people don't really think of it like this. I keep reading we need a midfield player next to Bruno. I think we need a midfield player in place of Bruno. You know, his natural position is a 10, and we've signed two people to play at 10, and we've also got Ahmad who likes to play at 10. Bruno might be fourth in the pecking order for the number 10 role at the minute. You know, they've not spent all that money on Bumo and Kuna for no reason. So they're now sort of shoehorning Bruno into the team as a number 6. He's not a number 6. I don't care what anybody says. And I'm seeing all these stats about him having won the ball back. According to some stat that I saw on Twitter, he's won the ball back more than any other player in the Premier League. Well, I just like to go off the eye test, mate, and he's not a number 6. He leaves the space behind him far too often for me, and he's not a number 6, and I don't believe he should be playing there. Whether that means he should still be playing as a 10, I don't know. You know, we've signed two people to fill that role. So I think we need a midfield player to take Bruno's place rather than to play next to him. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, I'm not absolutely convinced by all the centre-backs like a lot of people are. I would like us to have signed a really top-class centre-back. I'm not as impressed with De Ligt as most people are. I think he's okay. He's okay. And the same with Yoro. I've been watching Yoro closely the last couple of weeks. His passing's too slack, and I don't think Yoro is quite what everybody else thinks he is. And I wasn't surprised against Burnley with Mazraoui now being fit, and Mazraoui came on only for 10 or 15 minutes at the end, maybe 10 minutes. And I believe that was an attempt, and it worked, by the way, because it was 2-2 at the time. So I believe that was an attempt to strengthen the team, bringing Mazraoui on for Yoro. And my prediction here and now is that, so long as obviously people stay fit, that there's always that question. But if people stay fit, I think Mazraoui will take over that right-sided centre-back role.
Yeah, I think he had quite an impact when he came on
Yeah.
in the late stage of that Burnley match. Just wrapping up the window, there was a lot of talk about the bomb squad. It kind of ran late into the window until some departures actually happened. What's your thoughts about the players that were pushed out? Obviously, there were some longstanding players that the club wanted to move on, but what were your thoughts about just kind of the players that moved on this window? Any areas where you were happy that they moved, or just concerned that maybe we left ourselves light in certain positions, just trying to clean up the books from a PSR perspective?
Well, I've just said that I'm not absolutely over the moon with all the centre backs we've got, and I still don't think Victor Lindelof. Um, I think a lot of people just like shiny new toys, and I think they think some of the players that we've signed are better than Lindelof, and I'm not sure they are. And I'm not surprised that he's managed to get a contract at Aston Villa. He's got a couple of seasons, I think, at Aston Villa. I know Villa haven't had a great start, but they've been a better team than us for 2 or 3 seasons. They've been in Europe 3 seasons on the bounce. They finished in the top 6, I think, last season. They've been a better side than us for a couple of years, Aston Villa. So, I always look at that, mate. If we let a player go and a better team than us signs him, it doesn't sit quite right with me. Why has a better team than us signed him? Is that a fair question?
No, it is a fair question.
Yeah.
It is a fair question given the squad feels a little lopsided at the moment. But any thoughts on we finally moved Anthony on. Rashford got his deal.
Glad Anthony's gone. I was never a big fan. I would like to have seen him. I'm a stickler, me, for left-footed players on the left and right-footed players on the right, and I would have loved to have seen Anthony have a run out on the left. Having said that, I don't think he's keen on playing on the left himself. But if I was manager, I would have made him play on the left. Have a go at it. If you don't do well at that, you can go. You know what I mean? But he's always played on the right, and he always checks back onto his left foot. I was glad to see the back of Anthony. I've never been a Marcus Rashford fan, and I know he's only gone on loan to Barcelona. And I've watched a couple of his cameos for Barcelona. He isn't doing well. He isn't. I don't know what's written in the contracts for Marcus and Barcelona, whether they can send him back or whether in the January window they can send him back. But my prediction there is that if they can send him back, they will send him back in the January window. I watched the cameo that he had at the weekend, and he played one long ball through the middle that went straight through to the keeper. I've seen him do the exact same thing 200 times probably playing for United, and the camera panned onto the manager Hansi Flick, and he looked stunned. He looked absolutely stunned. I'm sure he was thinking, "What the hell is that?" Well, if he'd watched United for the last 4 or 5 years, he'd have seen it 200 or 300 times over. He regularly does that sort of thing, really long balls that just go past everybody and straight through to the keeper. So don't be surprised if they can, if Barcelona send him back. That's my prediction there. I'm glad to see Anthony go. One player that I like that most people don't. When I say like, I know there's been problems between him and the club or between him and the managers, but I think Sancho's an underrated player, another one that's gone to Villa. And I was a bit surprised because I understand that he fell out with the previous manager, but he's never worked under the manager that we've got now. And I was a little bit surprised that this manager didn't even want to entertain him and have a look at him and see how he does. He's another one, by the way, who's played for better clubs not better clubs than us, a massive, massive club, but better teams than us. We loaned him to Dortmund, and he played in the Champions League final for Dortmund. And then last season we loaned him to Chelsea, and they finished 4th in the league. If you don't try and think about the name of the player, if you're a Sancho hater, because I know there's plenty of them out there, if you don't think about the name of the player, we need players who can reach Champions League finals and finish 4th in the league. You know what I mean? So he's one that I would like to have seen get a chance under the new manager, and a new manager that's never worked with him. So I don't understand why he didn't. I thought it might happen that he might put an olive branch out to Sancho, but obviously it didn't. He's also gone to Villa. I'm praying that we can finish above Villa again this season. They've not had a good start, Villa, and I think it might. I might be wrong, but I think it might be going a bit stale. He's a fantastic manager, but he's been there 3 seasons, and sometimes you need a fresh voice in the dressing room. Do you know what I mean? So it might just be going a little bit stale for Villa. But I could be wrong. They could suddenly kick into gear.
Early days yet, and we have seen that before from Unai Emery sides. Last question on the transfer window before we move on is just, what about signings, talking about players moving on to clubs in better form than we're at? You know, a player moved to Chelsea, a player moved to Napoli. Did you think those departures were necessary headed into the summer transfer window, and Alejandro Garnacho and Højlund moving on, one permanent, one alone to become permanent? You know, I think that could have gone differently if United had played this summer from a different perspective, but I'd love to get your thoughts on those two departures.
Yeah, I think Garnacho's never been one of my favourites. Another one, and you know, I agree with a lot of what the manager's done. There's one or two things I don't agree with, but Garnacho's never been one of my favourites. Something that has surprised me is how he did play so many minutes. He was not just an automatic starter, but he very rarely got substituted. I saw lots of games last year where he was getting the ball, running into trouble, losing it, running it into touch, all sorts of stuff like that. And I'd be thinking they'd be taking him off in a minute, and he'd end up playing the full 90 minutes. He was like the manager's pet player, if you like. And then suddenly in the summer, he's gone. He's never been one of my favourites. I'm surprised. I'll tell you what I will say. I've read loads of stuff about such a player fetched this much and such a player cost that much. We should be getting 40, 50, 60 million. I know they got 40. To me, he's a £10 million player, and I mean it. He's a £10 million player. Let's see if I get proved wrong. Let's see how he does at Chelsea. But, you know, I think we've done fantastic business getting 40 million for Garnacho. I really do. And I'm stunned that Chelsea were even interested in him. But again, like the Rashford situation at Barcelona there, when I've just said the manager looked amazed when he saw that long pass that Rashford played. This manager, you know, he might give Garnacho a few runs. Let's just see what happens. I think you might find that Garnacho hardly even gets on as a sub. They've got numerous wingers, haven't they? You know, he's not going to get games in front of Neto. You know, they've got 2 or 3 other good wingers as well. So he won't get a lot of game time, I don't think.
There's a lot of competition in that Chelsea squad. Last was just Højlund. Are you happy to see him go? Do you think we have the right depth in the number 9?
I feel a bit sorry for Højlund, but I don't think he was quite up to it, if I'm honest. I'd love to have seen him get a chance playing with a right-footed right winger and a left-footed left winger, which we rarely ever do. We don't even play with wingers now under this manager. But no, I don't think he was quite good enough. But I wish him well. He certainly works his socks off. I love players who try to do the right thing. To me, I've just mentioned Garnacho. Garnacho, you could see when the ball was coming to Garnacho that the first thing in his mind was, I'm going to try and get this ball and have a shot. Right? A lot of people like that sort of stuff. But to me, a player should be thinking where he can pass it, who he can bring into the game. And a shot should only come into his mind when it's actually on. I don't like players thinking, I'm going to try and get a shot in no matter what. It usually ends up with you losing the ball. And that's used to happen a lot with Garnacho. But Højlund, he did try to play the game in the right way, but I just don't think he was quite up to it.
Yeah. No argument there. Rick, you alluded to it. What are your thoughts about the manager? You know, he hasn't been here that long, but what's your impression of Ruben Amorim? Do you have faith in the system? We talked about Bruno Fernandes pushing deeper. You know, that necessarily wouldn't have to be the case, even with the new signings, if we went 4-2-3-1. So I just love to get your take on our Portuguese manager.
Like a lot of people, I like, he talks a good game. I do like listening to him in the press conferences. When he first came into the job, and everybody knew that he played, they call it a 3-4-3, but really it's a 5-2-2-1, isn't it? You know what I mean? The 2 wing backs do drop in when we're out of possession, and it's like a back 5, and then 2 number 6s, 2 number 10s, and a number 9. I've always thought there's not enough players in midfield, but he'd done so well. I know he's in the Portuguese league. He'd done so well in Sporting. I thought, well, maybe with this guy, it could work. But I'm having second thoughts about that, and he certainly isn't one for changing. I think the only way it can work is if you get a ridiculous amount of hard work out of your 2 number 10s, because even though you've got a back 5. They can get past, the opposition can get past 2 midfield players so easily, so that they're up against your defenders, just easily, and that can lead to too many goals conceded. We've already conceded 4 goals, haven't we? yeah, 4 goals we've conceded in 3 games. It's not horrendous, but it needs to be better. And I don't. A lot of people just look at the defenders, by the way, when they're looking at the goal or the goalkeeper. But it's a team game. You've got to defend as a team and attack as a team. And we definitely need. I'm not saying they're not working hard enough, but they need to drop deep quickly when we're out of possession, the 2 number 10, so that we can fill that midfield a little bit. I've heard people saying that Chelsea played the same system when they won the league once. Wasn't quite the same system. It was very, very similar. The 2 wing backs were full backs, and then the 2 wide men. They worked so hard to fill in along with the 2 midfield players. And the 2 midfield players, by the way, were N'Golo Kante and Nemanja Matic. They both knocked spots off any of the midfield players we've got. So that helps as well. Do you know what I mean?
You could definitely use a vintage Conte in this side. We've had some time to digest. What are your feelings about last season? What do you think went wrong in your mind?
Last season, it was horrendous, wasn't it? I could never have.
Certainly.
I could never have imagined us finishing 15th in the league. I could never, ever have imagined it, honestly. I thought we were a big enough club and we'd had so much success over. So I know that success can't just roll on and roll on and roll on. I get that you have to have lean times. But I could never envisage us being outside, say, the top 10, but 15th, wow. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, it was a rough season. Hopefully that is the bottom of the valley, as they say. So what, thinking about the new, thinking about the fresh, moving forward, we're not looking back here. We have to think that way as Manchester United fans. What are your expectations for the upcoming season? Where do you think United will finish in the table at the end of this year?
I am feeling a little bit more positive, as we just spoke about the signings. And we have played a bit better, without a doubt. I thought we played quite well against Arsenal, and we're unlucky not to get something out of it. And then at Fulham, we had good spells, and then against Burnley. Obviously, the Grimsby game in the League Cup was horrendous, but he shouldn't have gone in there with 2 ridiculously young centre-backs playing. That was the biggest problem against Grimsby. We couldn't dominate the opposition when they managed to get into our half, and they were managing to get periods of play in our half. And I'm sorry to have to say it, because you want these lads to be great players, but I can only say it as I see it. And the 2 young lads weren't strong enough, and that cost us in a big way. They don't have to be. A lot of people think that means that they were at fault with this goal or at fault with this or at fault with. I'm not saying that. You've got to be stronger. You've got to win the ball more comfortably so that you can get hold of it and pass it and start your team having long passing movements rather than the opposition. And they just weren't quite good enough on the night. So that Grimsby game aside, I think we've done okay. Burnley, I know they got 2 goals. We ended up nicking it right at the end, but we still played some good football. I am feeling more positive, but when I say more positive, how positive? Definitely. I think we'll definitely finish higher than we did last year. And I would stick my neck out. I know look, as a United fan, you might say, wow, big deal. But we were 15th last year. Let's be realistic. I guarantee you we'll be top 10. I guarantee you. And I'd like that to be 5th or 6th, but 5th would be fantastic. That's Champions League football these days, isn't it? Maybe not that high, but somewhere between 5th and 10th, I'll say. I won't go any deeper than that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair prediction. And do you think top 10 would be progress, a success, given the context of last season, given all the moving parts as well, the squad and the team?
Yeah, I won't call it success, but definitely progress. Every single position matters. 9th or 10th, you'd have to say, it needs to be a bit better. 7th or 8th, you might just say, okay, it's a step in the right direction if we can gain another 3 places the year after. So, really, 7th or 8th, I'd say it would be okay after last year. 9th or 10th, still a bit of a struggle, really, that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Moving on, what is your impression of the new regime? What's your impression of INEOS? How would you grade their performance since they've come on board? What do you think they need to do to kind of turn this around, win back the fans? Sir Jim has been quick on the trigger with the Ashworth firing. I'd just love to get your impression about Sir Jim and the rest of the crew.
Well, look, obviously the fans like it when the club are spending money, don't they? And as I said earlier, they've certainly spent enough money in this window. And we seem, I mean, I'm sure that it's not just, I don't think it's entirely on the manager's shoulders who they sign as well. So they have been signing some decent players in my opinion. I'm not 100%. Should you really criticise them for spending so much money when if let's just say Sesko doesn't work out, whose fault would that be? They've still spent, is it 70 million on him?
Yeah.
So I don't know where to go with that. They've spent enough money, but have they got the right players? The only one I'm absolutely convinced by so far is Bumo. But is that their fault? Who's the who's the people who are actually saying this player's worth that much and that player's worth this much? Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm pleased with the amount of money they've spent, but we've got to see with a couple of the players. The jury's still out.
And what about beyond just the signings? They've done some unpopular things. There was the austerity cuts.
All the people that they've cut the jobs out of. I can't. Look, when you're running a business, you've sort of got to penny pinch. You've got to try and make ends meet in certain businesses, or probably in almost any business. But when Manchester United, it just leaves a sour taste when you've got. I know the famous footballers, but when you've got certain employees earning 200,000, even 300,000 pound a week in a couple of cases, and you're making people redundant who probably earn that in, I don't know, 10 years, some of them. You know what I mean? It just doesn't sit well with me. Just doesn't sit well with me, that at all.
Where do you see this playing out? This is my last real question is, do you think INEOS will have the time and money and appetite to turn things around, or you think things will hit the skids eventually and they'll be forced to sell? That's kind of my co-host's impression. I think at some point he's going to run out of dough and he's going to have to sell to a sovereign in the Middle East, maybe a tech guy out here in California, but we'll see. What are your thoughts there?
It's a real tough question, that. Obviously, with my heart, I hope it works. I just hope it works out. If we can climb to 7th or 8th this year, and if some of them new players have a good season, that'd help us attract new players next year. It depends on the success on the pitch, doesn't it, really? If the success on the pitch continues to improve, well, it hasn't really improved at all yet, but if it starts to improve and then continues, there's a chance they could stick around. But it's a really tricky question. I'd just love it to work for them. I'd love it to work for them.
You and me both. Well, Rick, I really appreciate the time. I know you pulled the time away from your family. You're also in southern Spain in September. Great place to be. While we have you, where could people find more of your content and connect with you going forward?
I put a lot of stuff on Instagram. I'm Rick the Red UK on Instagram, and I do use a little bit of footage as well. I've just put a cracker on the other day, and I'm going to talk about it again tomorrow. I think this one. I put one on the other day about Burnley's. I think it was the first goal that got crossed in from the right, and dozens and dozens of people have said to me, where was Diego Dalot? So I don't know if you've seen it, but if you want to have a look at it, it's only a minute long or a minute and a half long. But De Ligt moves out to the left back spot as it has to, because he's chasing a player out there who's chasing the ball. So Dalot goes on the cover, and then De Ligt should stay in that left back spot, and Dalot should stay at centre back until the danger has gone. And he doesn't, and De Ligt starts to come back in field, which means Dalot's then got to go out. In my opinion, and I'm adamant that it's correct, the problem was all caused by De Ligt and not by Dalot. And I think a lot of people, obviously I read the comments, I've had loads of people on there say, wow, yes, spot on. There's also plenty of people saying, no, it's Dalot's fault. If you really understand the game and you watch, De Ligt should not be moving back in field. And it's only because he's moving back in field that Dalot then starts moving out. If De Ligt would have just stayed with the winger instead of coming in field, they might not have even passed it to that winger. When De Ligt leaves him, he's got 15 yards of space. It's a minute and a half long, and it's got footage with it. So it's on Instagram on Rick the Red UK.
Perfect. Well, we'll be sure to check that out. And we really appreciate it, Rick. It's great to have you on, friend of the pod. And we hope you have a great season, great time in Spain. And we look forward to having you back on.
I've enjoyed it. I look forward to you inviting me again.
Cheers.